Aaron Blackwell's office was quiet, but not empty. The faint hum of the city below seemed to pulse through the floorboards, as if the heartbeat of Manhattan itself had seeped into the polished mahogany and glass walls surrounding him. He sat behind his desk, an island of stillness in a sea of muted chaos, stacks of contracts, invitations to charity galas, and glossy brochures for investments he would never read in detail. The skyline stretched before him, a sprawling canvas of lights, movement, and life. Yet it felt distant, almost untouchable, like the world beyond these walls belonged to someone else entirely. He poured himself a glass of scotch, the amber liquid, catching the reflection of the setting sun, and let the burn settle in his chest. It was meant to anchor him, but tonight, even the familiar warmth offered no comfort. His gaze fell on the final envelope in a neatly arranged pile. The kind of envelope meant for those who mattered, or at least, those who were expected to. It was black, thick, and sealed with gold. The kind of elegant simplicity that spoke louder than any flourish of color. Something about it drew his attention sharply, breaking the monotony of names he could barely remember. He picked it up, feeling the weight of its presence, and turned it over. The name on the back sent a flicker of surprise across his face, a ripple that he quickly masked with a practiced smile. Emily Brown. For a moment, the world around him blurred. The office, the papers, the city lights all faded as memories clawed their way to the surface. He could see her face clearly, the softness of her expression, the way her eyes had once held an unwavering trust in him, and he had broken it. He had shattered the illusion she had placed in his hands and walked away, convinced he was protecting himself from a vulnerability he had long since sworn to bury. Now, after all these years, her name stared back at him from the invitation, as though fate itself were daring him to remember. "Send it," he said finally, his voice steady, but carrying an undercurrent of something even he didn't fully understand. A casual order, but beneath it lay the faintest tremor of curiosity, or perhaps guilt. The secretary nodded obediently, scribbling a note without question. Yet as the door closed behind her, Aaron felt a strange tension coil inside him, a shadow he could not shake. It was unsettling, the way the past could sneak into the present without warning. Meanwhile, across the city, Emily sat at a modest kitchen table in her small apartment, her hands trembling slightly as they hovered over the thick, black envelope that had arrived just that morning. She had recognized the sender immediately. The name alone was enough to trigger a cascade of emotions she had spent years trying to suppress. Hurt, anger, and a flickering curiosity she refused to acknowledge. She had built a life for herself and her daughter, a life of quiet strength and determination. But the envelope challenged all of it. It demanded attention, forced a reckoning she hadn't anticipated. After a long, measured breath, she opened it. The card inside was pristine, elegant, and formal, the kind that belonged to a world she had deliberately left behind. Her eyes traced the calligraphy, and when they landed on his name, her chest tightened. Aaron Blackwell. 7 years had passed since the moment he turned his back on her, leaving her alone to navigate the storm of life that followed. The memory of that night returned with vivid clarity, the glimmering city lights through his penthouse windows, the finality in his voice, the coldness of his words that had branded her like fire. She had carried more than just heartbreak that day. She had carried his child, the living proof of a love he refused to acknowledge. Emily pressed the card to her chest, and for a moment, she allowed herself a brief wave of fear. She could almost hear the whisper of the past, the echo of pain and rejection that had shaped her into the woman she had become. But beneath it, something else stirred, a quiet determination, a resilient flame that refused to be extinguished. This was not a return to the life she had lost. It was a chance to confront it, to assert her existence, and to reveal a truth he could no longer deny. Her daughter, Lily, played quietly on the floor nearby, oblivious to the storm brewing in the adult world. Her laughter, soft and innocent, broke through the tension like sunlight through clouds. Emily's eyes softened as she looked at her child, the living reminder of courage, love, and survival. This child had changed everything. She had given Emily a purpose stronger than fear, more enduring than heartbreak. And tonight, as she prepared to enter a world that had once crushed her, she knew that her daughter's presence would be both shield and sword dot by the time the evening came. The city's skyline had transformed into a sea of lights and shadows, the kind that could make one feel simultaneously powerful and insignificant. Emily and Lily stepped out of the car, the black fabric of her gown contrasting sharply with the innocence of her child's dress. They moved with a quiet confidence, the kind that comes from years of overcoming challenges no one else could understand. And as they approached the grand doors of the gala, Aaron Blackwell's eyes caught them immediately. He froze, not out of shock but because of the weight of recognition. Emily's posture, her composed grace, the unmistakable resemblance of Lily's blue eyes to his own, they struck him like a jolt of lightning. The moment hung in the air, suspended between the past and the present, between what had been and what could never be undone. For the first time in years, Aaron felt a pang of something he thought he had buried long ago, something raw, unfiltered, and undeniably human. The room seemed to fall away, the murmurs of the elite fading into a distant hum. All that remained was Emily and the child he had never known existed. And in that suspended instant, the balance of power, pride, and pretense shifted. The night had promised glittering lights and polite smiles, but it delivered a confrontation far more potent, a reckoning of hearts, a collision of past mistakes with unanticipated truths. Aaron's fingers tightened around the stem of his glass, his knuckles pale against the crystal. Every calculated step he had taken over the past 7 years, the control, the ambition, the relentless pursuit of perfection felt fragile under the weight of this revelation. And as Emily's eyes met his, steady and unflinching, he realized that the game he thought he controlled had been rewritten entirely. The stakes were no longer about wealth, status, or revenge. They were about truth, responsibility, and the undeniable force of a life he had never taken the time to understand. In that first fleeting moment, Aaron Blackwell understood something he had long refused to acknowledge. Power without empathy was a fragile illusion, and the past, no matter how carefully ignored, always has a way of finding its way back into the present. And tonight, it had come back to him in the form of a child, a woman, and a truth that could no longer be denied. The music inside the grand hall swelled, a symphony of polished elegance that could have drowned out any lingering doubts or fears. Yet, for Emily, the melodies were nothing more than background noise, a distant echo to the storm of emotions swirling inside her. Her hand tightened instinctively on Lily's small one, the child's trust and innocence grounding her in ways nothing else could. Each step toward the entrance felt heavier than the last, not because of fear of being seen, but because she carried a truth that had been hidden for years, a truth that would reshape lives in ways Aaron had never imagined. As they crossed the threshold, the grandeur of the ballroom hit them with full force. Towering crystal chandeliers, scattered rainbows across the marble floor, guests dressed in gowns and tuxedos moved with practiced elegance, and the murmur of polite conversation created a sophisticated hum that could have seemed comforting if Emily had been anyone else. But she wasn't anyone else. She was the woman he had dismissed, the mother of the child he had never known, and tonight she would claim her moment not as a plea, but as a revelation. Aaron had returned to his usual position near the center of the room, his presence commanding. Without effort, the moment he noticed Emily, his eyes narrowed slightly, not with anger, but with the sudden, sharp awareness of how little he had anticipated this reunion. She was not the same woman he had known. She carried herself with a grace born from resilience, her expression calm, but her eyes burning with a quiet intensity. And the child beside her, Lily, had his eyes. The resemblance was undeniable, a mirror of his own gaze that seemed to challenge every belief he had clung to for years. Emily's entrance did not go unnoticed by the other guests. A few glanced briefly, curiosity flickering in their eyes before their attention returned to the more familiar faces. But Aaron could not look away. Something deep inside him, something he had carefully buried beneath ambition and control, stirred in a way that demanded acknowledgement. He felt a pull he had not expected, a sudden awareness that life had consequences he could no longer manipulate or ignore. She moved through the crowd with composed determination, ignoring the whispers and stolen glances Emily had learned over the years that confidence was more than posture or speech. It was the quiet, unwavering conviction that one's presence mattered, regardless of the judgments of others. Tonight, she carried that confidence like armor. But it was not armor against fear, it was armor against injustice, against the memory of betrayal, and against the lingering shadows of a man who had once held her heart in his hands and discarded it. Aaron watched her approach, his mind a whirl of suppressed emotion. He remembered every detail from years ago, the way her voice had quivered when she first told him of the child, the hope that had shone so brightly in her eyes, and the crushing silence that followed his rejection. He had believed at the time that he was protecting himself from weakness, from vulnerability. But standing there now, seeing her composed yet unyielding, he realized that the weakness had never been hers, it had been his. The child beside Emily held her hand tightly, glancing curiously at the towering figures and glittering dresses around. Her Lily's innocence and bravery were evident in the way she clung to her mother, yet dared to observe the world with wide, intelligent eyes. There was no hesitation in her steps, no fear in her gaze. She had grown up knowing she was loved and valued, despite the absence of the man who had unknowingly contributed to her existence. That realization hit Aaron with unexpected force. The life he had ignored, the bond he had refused to nurture, was thriving without him. And yet, seeing them both now, he felt a pull he could not name, a yearning to reconnect, to acknowledge, to perhaps repair something that had been broken for far too long. Emily approached the table where Aaron had positioned himself strategically, surrounded by colleagues and socialites who hung on his every word. She did not hesitate, her gaze steady, unwavering, meeting his with an intensity that both unsettled and captivated him. There was no plea in her expression, no demand for apology or validation. There was simply truth and the undeniable presence of the child who embodied it. The room seemed to shrink as their eyes locked, a quiet intensity that silenced the polite chatter around them. Aaron felt a sudden, unfamiliar vulnerability. The ice he had carefully cultivated over the years began to crack, not because of charm or seduction, but because of authenticity. Here was a woman who had endured pain, who had carried a child alone, who had risen above every obstacle with dignity and grace. She was unshakable, and the child beside her was a living testament to the choices she had made and the love she had protected fiercely. If for a fleeting moment, Aaron was tempted to retreat into the persona he had carefully built, a persona of untouchable control, wealth, and influence. But it felt hollow, meaningless against the reality before him. The weight of years spent in denial pressed against him, forcing an acknowledgement he could no longer avoid. Emily had survived, thrived even, and she had done so without him. And yet there was an undeniable connection, a bond forged not by wealth or status, but by life, love, and shared history. Emily's lips curved in the faintest hint of a smile, not of triumph, but of understanding. She extended her free hand slightly, a gesture that was neither formal nor pleading, but deliberate, a subtle challenge, a quiet declaration that she had emerged stronger, unbroken, and resolute. The room seemed to hold its breath as Aaron considered his next move. The game of power, manipulation, and social dominance felt trivial in comparison to the weight of this encounter. He realized that every calculated strategy he had deployed over the years was irrelevant here. What mattered was acknowledgement, honesty, and perhaps the courage to confront a past he had long avoided. And then Lily, sensing the tension, tugged gently at her mother's hand and looked up at Aaron with a soft, unassuming curiosity. There was no fear in her gaze, no judgment, only the innocent, unfiltered recognition of something important. Aaron's heart tightened unexpectedly, a surge of emotion he had spent years suppressing now rising unbidden. He saw in her eyes a reflection of what he had lost, of a life he could have been part of, and of a responsibility he had neglected. The moment hung, suspended in the air like a fragile crystal, as if time itself had paused to witness the collision of past mistakes and present truths. The whispers of the crowd, the glittering lights, the polished walls all faded into insignificance. Here, in this precise moment, there was only the reality of what had been denied, what had endured, and what now demanded acknowledgement. Aaron Blackwell finally spoke, his voice low, measured, but carrying a weight it had never held before. I didn't know. The words were simple, but the gravity behind them was immense. It was not an excuse, not a defense, only the admission of truth. Emily's gaze softened just slightly, but the strength in her posture never wavered. She had no need for his validation, yet the acknowledgement had power. It signaled the possibility of understanding, the potential for a bridge between the past and a future yet to be written. And in that moment, with music and chatter surrounding them but unable to penetrate the bubble of truth, Aaron realized that life had presented him with an opportunity he could no longer ignore. The power he had once prized above all else, the wealth, the status, the control, faded in importance. What remained was connection, responsibility, and the possibility of redemption. Emily and Lily stood before him, unshakable, undeniable, and full of life, and Aaron, for the first time in years, felt the stirrings of something he had long thought lost: humility, awe, and the stirring of a heart that could still choose to act, to acknowledge, and perhaps to make amends. The evening had begun as a display of wealth and influence, but it was evolving into something infinitely more powerful: a reckoning of the heart, a confrontation with truth, and the first steps toward a story that none of them could have predicted. The night stretched on, but the tension between Emily and Aaron was a quiet drumbeat that neither could ignore. The ballroom glittered with opulent chandeliers, refracted light into 1,000 sparkling shards across the marble floor, and the music swirled around the guests in waves of elegance. But for Aaron, the world had narrowed to the presence of a woman and a child who had unknowingly held the power to upend his carefully curated existence. Emily moved with measured grace, gliding past tables of socialites and influential figures, her gaze occasionally catching the curious glances of those around her. There was nothing forced in her composure. Every movement was a statement of strength, subtle yet undeniable. She did not seek to provoke Aaron, nor did she aim to intimidate him. She simply existed as someone who had survived, someone who had carved a life from the ruins left behind, and someone who would not allow the past to dictate her present. Aaron, meanwhile, found himself unable to divert his attention. He had rehearsed countless scenarios in his mind over the past 7 years, imagining what he might do if fate ever placed her back in front of him. But nothing had prepared him for this reality. The child beside her, his child, was a living testament to the years he had missed, the moments he would never reclaim, and the consequences of choices he had made in his pursuit of control and power. The weight of it settled on his shoulders like a mantle, one heavier than any boardroom decision, heavier than any business conquest. For a brief moment, he considered retreating, hiding behind the walls he had built, surrounding himself with familiar power and influence. But the innocence in Lily's eyes and the strength in Emily's stance anchored him in a way no wealth or status ever had. He realized that his presence, his recognition, was required not for his own sake, but because life had demanded accountability. And in that accountability lay the first spark of redemption, the first opportunity to act not as a man of power, but as a father and as someone who had been wrong. Emily led Lily toward a quieter corner of the ballroom, a space slightly removed from the glitter and chatter. The child's small hand clutched hers tightly, a lifeline of trust and innocence. Emily knelt slightly to meet her daughter's gaze, offering a comforting smile. "Stay close," she whispered, and the child nodded, her trust in her mother absolute, unshakable. It was a trust born of love and sacrifice, of nights spent navigating a world that had not always been kind, yet of a bond stronger than any hardship they had endured together. Aaron watched, transfixed, as mother and daughter moved through the room. There was a rhythm to their steps, a quiet confidence that commanded attention without seeking it. He was struck by the realization that his world, the world he had fought to dominate, was irrelevant here. The true power was not in wealth, not in social standing, not in accolades or influence. The true power was in resilience, in the courage to face adversity, and in the love that could flourish even when abandoned by those who should have protected it. As the evening progressed, Aaron found himself stepping closer, drawn by an invisible force he could neither name nor resist. He watched Emily interact with other guests with polite courtesy, yet every gesture was measured, every word precise. She had mastered the art of existing in a world that had once rejected her, and she had done so without compromising her integrity. It was a strength that left him both in awe and in quiet regret. Lily, oblivious to the undercurrents swirling around her, giggled at a passing display of light, and Emily's gaze softened. The child's laughter was a balm, a reminder of hope, and a stark contrast to the tension Aaron felt coiling inside him. He realized that while he had accumulated power in tangible forms, buildings, contracts, influence, Emily had amassed something far more enduring, a legacy of love, courage, and resilience. She had not needed him to survive. In fact, she had flourished in his absence. And yet, there was a part of him that longed to step forward, to bridge the gap that years of absence had created. Finally, Emily paused near a balcony that overlooked the city. The lights below casting a soft glow on her features, she leaned slightly, her hands resting on the railing, and allowed herself a moment of reflection. She thought of the years that had passed, the struggles that had tested her strength, and the quiet victories that had built the life she now cherished. Lily's small hand found hers, and she squeezed it gently, a reminder that every decision, every sacrifice had been worth it. Aaron, standing a few feet away, felt a surge of emotion he could not name. The man he had been, the one who prized control above all else, felt a shift within him, subtle yet undeniable. He realized that the world he had built, though vast and imposing, had always been incomplete. True wealth was not measured in skyscrapers or bank accounts, but in the connections we nurture, the lives we impact, and the courage we show when faced with our own failings. The soft strains of the orchestra reached a crescendo, and Emily turned slightly, her eyes scanning the room. Their gazes met again, and in that silent exchange, years of unspoken truths, regrets, and possibilities converged. Aaron saw in her eyes a quiet strength that both humbled and challenged him. She did not seek vengeance, nor did she plead for recognition. She simply stood as a testament to resilience, to the enduring power of love and determination. A part of Aaron wanted to speak, to explain, to justify the years he had been absent, but he knew words would not suffice. What was required was action, acknowledgement, and perhaps the courage to embrace a role he had long avoided, the role of a father, a man willing to confront the consequences of his past, and a person capable of change. Emily approached the balcony, her daughter close by her side, and Aaron followed, drawn by a force he could neither resist nor deny. The music, the glitter, and the chatter of the ballroom faded into the background, leaving only the undeniable presence of two lives intertwined by circumstances, choices, and the passage of time. Lily, Emily said softly, her voice carrying the calm authority of a woman who had navigated hardship and emerged stronger. This is where we decide what comes next. The child's eyes met Aaron's briefly, curiosity and innocence shining through. He knelt slightly to meet her gaze, feeling the weight of unspoken responsibility settle on him like a mantle he could no longer ignore. The moment was electric, suspended between the past and the future, a delicate balance of truth, courage, and possibility. Aaron understood that this was more than a reunion, it was a reckoning, a test of character, and a chance to forge a path he had never dared to walk. And as he extended a hand, first to Emily and then to Lily, he felt the first stirrings of something profound, the potential for healing, for connection, and for a story that had yet to be written, one defined not by mistakes, but by courage, love, and the relentless pursuit of redemption. In that instant, Aaron Blackwell realized that the life he had once pursued with singular determination was no longer sufficient. Real strength, he understood now, was measured not by control or influence, but by the courage to face the past, the willingness to embrace responsibility, and the capacity to nurture what truly mattered. Emily and Lily had taught him that power without love was empty, and that legacy was forged not through dominance, but through resilience, compassion, and unwavering commitment. And as the city lights flickered below, casting shadows and illumination across their faces, the three of them, father, mother, and child, stood at the threshold of a new beginning, one shaped by truth, courage, and the promise of what could yet be. The night air on the balcony was crisp, carrying the faint hum of the city below, a reminder that life continued in its relentless rhythm, indifferent to personal revelations or reconciliations, Emily stood there, holding Lily close, feeling the warmth of her child against the cool evening breeze. She took a deep breath, centering herself, aware that this encounter with Aaron was more than a confrontation, it was a crossroads, a defining moment for all three of them. Every decision from this point forward would carry weight, shaping futures that could no longer remain suspended in uncertainty. Aaron remained a few steps behind, hesitant but drawn by a force he could not name. The man he had been, the one who believed power and wealth could shield him from vulnerability, was being dismantled piece by piece by the simple, undeniable presence of Emily and Lily. He had imagined many scenarios, rehearsed countless dialogues in the privacy of his mind, yet none of them had captured the raw truth before him. Now they were here, undeniable and real, and nothing he had achieved in his insulated world could alter that reality. Emily's eyes met his, unwavering and clear, demanding acknowledgement not through anger or accusation, but through the quiet authority of someone who had endured, survived, and thrived. She did not need words. Her presence alone carried the weight of the story that had unfolded over years of absence, struggle, and unspoken resilience. She had built a life defined by courage and love, and every step she took was a testament to the power of rising above betrayal. Aaron's gaze shifted to Lily, and his breath caught. The resemblance to himself was startling, undeniable. In that moment, he saw not only a reflection of the life he had ignored, but also the embodiment of hope and innocence. The child carried no judgment, no bitterness, only curiosity, trust, and the capacity to love without reservation. For the first time in years, Aaron felt the overwhelming responsibility of what it meant to be a father, not just in title, but in action and commitment. Emily spoke softly, her voice steady yet carrying the weight of experience. This child deserves truth, stability, and love, not just from me, but from both of us. If you are willing to step into the life you helped create. There was no accusation in her words, no plea for apology, only clarity, an invitation to take responsibility and participate in a future that was no longer bound by past mistakes. Aaron swallowed hard, his thoughts a whirlwind of regret, realization, and a raw desire to act correctly for the first time. He had spent years believing he was untouchable, that his power and wealth could substitute for the human connections he had neglected. But standing there, facing the tangible consequences of his absence, he recognized a profound truth. Success, measured only by achievement, influence, or status, was hollow. Real achievement was measured in lives nurtured, in love offered without condition, and in courage shown when confronting the consequences of one's choices. Emily continued, sensing the storm of emotion in him, yet unshaken herself. I am not asking you to undo the past. It cannot be changed. But you can shape what comes next. You can be present, accountable, and caring. That is all Lily asks and all you owe, truly. She reached out, not in a gesture of manipulation, but as an offering of possibility, a bridge between the past and a future that demanded courage. Lily tugged gently at Aaron's sleeve, her small hand warm and insistent. Her wide eyes searched his face, and in them was a silent plea, not of words, but of trust and hope. Aaron knelt slowly, bringing himself to eye level with her, feeling a connection that bypassed pride, ego, and fear. I want to be here, he said, voice tight with emotion he could no longer restrain. I want to do right by you, by both of you. His admission was simple, yet it carried the weight of years of absence, mistakes, and missed moments. Emily studied him carefully, seeing the sincerity behind his words. She had learned to read people with precision, to discern intent beneath carefully constructed facades, and in that moment, she recognized a truth that had long eluded her. Aaron was not the same man who had turned away years ago. He was present, vulnerable, and willing to face the consequences of his actions. That alone was a remarkable transformation, a testament to the enduring capacity for growth and change. Even in those who once seemed unyielding, the three of them stood there in silence, a family emerging from the shadows of the past. The city lights below sparkled like distant stars, yet none shone brighter than the fragile, tentative bond forming between them. Aaron extended his hand toward Emily first, a gesture of partnership and acknowledgement, and she accepted it with calm grace. Then he reached toward Lily, who hesitated only briefly before wrapping her small fingers around his. The simple act resonated with profound significance. Years of absence, mistakes, and pain were beginning to give way to connection, responsibility, and hope. Aaron felt a surge of emotion he could not name. Pride, yes, but not the pride of wealth or conquest. This was deeper, more authentic, the pride of recognizing the consequences of one's actions, the courage to face them, and the determination to nurture what mattered most. He realized that he had been given a rare opportunity not to reclaim the past, which was impossible, but to shape the future with integrity, compassion, and love. Emily's lips curved into a small, genuine smile. "We can take this slowly," she said, voice gentle but firm. "Trust is built, not demanded. But we start with honesty, presence, and care." The simplicity of her words carried immense power, a roadmap for rebuilding what had been lost and forging something enduring. From the lessons of pain, Aaron nodded, feeling the weight and promise of her guidance. "I understand. I will do whatever it takes. I won't run this time. I won't hide behind excuses or pride. I will be here." His voice was steady now, filled with a resolve that had been absent for too long. He was no longer the man who had walked away. He was someone ready to embrace responsibility, love, and the courage required to build a bond with the daughter he had never known. The night stretched on, but for the first time in years, Aaron felt a sense of clarity and purpose. Emily and Lily had reminded him of life's true priorities: connection, resilience, and the courage to act rightly, even when it is difficult. The shadows of the past lingered, but they no longer controlled him. He could choose to step forward, to nurture what had survived despite his absence, and to create a legacy defined not by dominance, but by love, responsibility, and courage. As they finally turned back toward the ballroom, the glittering lights, music, and chatter no longer felt alien or intimidating. They were simply part of the world they now navigated together, a world that could be shaped by choices, love, and the commitment to do what was right. And in that realization, Aaron, Emily, and Lily took their first steps toward a life that, while never perfect, promised authenticity, hope, and a family bond forged not by circumstance alone, but by courage, resilience, and unwavering determination. Days passed, yet the encounter at the gala lingered in Aaron's mind, refusing to fade. Each morning, the city skyline outside his office reminded him of everything he had achieved, yet none of it carried the weight of what truly mattered. The skyscrapers, the boardrooms, the endless contracts, they all seemed hollow in comparison to the life waiting for him just a few miles away. He had been powerful, untouchable, admired by many, yet it had taken the unwavering presence of a child and the strength of a woman to make him understand that power without connection was meaningless. Aaron knew he had no choice but to act, and yet the prospect terrified him. 7 years of absence, unspoken apologies, and missed milestones could not be undone with words alone. Trust had to be earned, and he would need patience, humility, and a steadfast commitment to show Emily and Lily that he was not the man who had walked away. Every thought brought him back to the night of the gala, to the steady gaze of Emily and the innocent curiosity of Lily, both of which had pierced through the armor he had spent years building. Emily, meanwhile, had returned to her daily life with a renewed sense of resolve. The gala had been more than an encounter. It had been a mirror reflecting the past she had endured and the life she had forged. She had seen in Aaron a glimmer of the man he could be, but she knew the path forward would require time, discernment, and boundaries. She had survived alone, raised Lily with courage, and built a world that honored the sacrifices she had made. And yet, she recognized the potential for healing, for connection, and for building a future where the mistakes of the past could give way to a bond rooted in honesty, respect, and love. Aaron made his first visit to their modest apartment the following week. His arrival was tentative, measured, conscious of the delicate balance he had disrupted. Lily's eyes lit up with curiosity and cautious excitement, and Emily met him at the door, her expression a careful mixture of calm and vigilance. "You're here," she said simply. It was not an accusation, nor a welcoming statement. was acknowledgement, and that was the first bridge he needed to cross. "I'm here," he replied, voice steady, but carrying an emotion he had long suppressed. "And I intend to stay." Those words were not mere promises, they were commitments. The beginning of a journey he could not walk back from. The three of them spent hours talking, Aaron listening more than speaking, absorbing the stories of missed birthdays, quiet struggles, and small victories that had shaped Lily's life. He realized that in his absence, they had not only survived, they had thrived. The weight of his previous choices pressed heavily on him, yet it also fueled his determination to be present, to contribute, and to make amends in ways that truly mattered. Days turned into weeks, and with each passing moment, Aaron found himself learning more than he ever had in boardrooms or during negotiations. Lily's laughter, curiosity, and resilience taught him patience. Emily's strength, wisdom, and unwavering dedication taught him humility. And the bond forming between them reminded him that redemption is not a single act, but a series of conscious choices made consistently over time. He began to understand that influence is not measured by wealth or status, but by the ability to nurture, support, and love those who depend on you. The turning point came on a quiet afternoon in the park, where Emily and Lily had taken Aaron to introduce him to the rhythms of their life, outside the confines of wealth and status. Watching Lily play, her laughter ringing like music through the air, Aaron felt a sense of responsibility unlike anything he had experienced before. He realized that his role was not to dominate or impress, but to protect, guide, and share in the small, meaningful moments that made life rich and enduring. Emily observed him closely, noting the subtle shifts in demeanor, the softening of his expressions, the genuine curiosity in his questions, and the care he took in listening to Lily. It was a transformation born not of obligation, but of understanding, empathy, and the desire to contribute meaningfully to the lives of those he had once abandoned. For her, it was proof that people can change when they are willing to confront their past and embrace responsibility. For him, it was the beginning of a journey toward redemption, one built on trust, patience, and authentic connection. One evening, as they gathered around the dinner table, Lily reached for Aaron's hand, her eyes wide and filled with trust. "Stay with us, please," she whispered. It was a small request, simple in words, yet profound in meaning. Aaron felt a swell of emotion he could no longer contain. He looked at Emily, who nodded slightly, acknowledging the progress they had made together. In that moment, he understood the truth that had eluded him for years. Love is not possession, power, or control. It is presence, commitment, and the willingness to nurture those who depend on you. Over time, their lives began to intertwine in ways both subtle and profound. Aaron attended parent-teacher meetings, celebrated small milestones, and created rituals that centered around family, not business. Emily allowed him to step into their world gradually, trusting him to earn a place, not through words, but through consistent, meaningful actions. Each day brought lessons in patience, empathy, and resilience, and Aaron embraced them with humility, recognizing that the journey toward being a present father and partner would require effort, far beyond what he had ever imagined. The community around them began to notice the change as well. Friends and neighbors, once distant, observed the quiet dedication Aaron displayed, helping Lily with homework, listening attentively to Emily's concerns, and supporting them in ways that transcended material generosity. He had learned that true influence is measured not by wealth or accolades, but by the impact one has on the lives of those they love, and the authenticity with which they engage with the world. As months passed, the bond between the three of them deepened, a testament to resilience, forgiveness, and the enduring power of love. Emily recognized the growth in Aaron, while he acknowledged the unwavering strength and wisdom she had always carried. Lily thrived in an environment where love was tangible, consistent, and rooted in presence rather than mere words. Together, they built routines, shared laughter, faced challenges, and celebrated triumphs. Aaron understood that this was more than personal redemption, it was the creation of a legacy that mattered. Wealth could build structures, influence could sway decisions, but love, commitment, and courage could shape lives in ways that no fortune or title ever could. He had been given a second chance, not to erase the past, but to build a future defined by authenticity, empathy, and unwavering dedication. And in that truth, Aaron, Emily, and Lily discovered the profound beauty of human resilience, the capacity to heal, to reconnect, and to create a life defined not by mistakes, but by courage, love, and the unshakable belief that even the deepest wounds can give way to growth and hope. Time, which had once seemed indifferent and unyielding, began to take on a new shape for Aaron, Emily, and Lily. The days were no longer measured by meetings, contracts, or obligations to the world beyond their apartment walls. Instead, they were measured by laughter shared over breakfast, quiet conversations on evening walks, and the small victories that made life rich and meaningful. Each sunrise was a reminder that redemption was not a singular act, but a journey, one that required presence, patience, and unwavering commitment. Aaron had grown into his new role gradually, but with remarkable sincerity. He learned the rhythms of their life, understanding the balance between being a father, a partner, and a man who had once been defined solely by ambition. Lily's curiosity, boundless and pure, drew him into a world he had never known, the world of imagination, wonder, and simple joys. Her questions, often unexpected and insightful, challenged him to think beyond business strategies and social status, teaching him empathy in its most unfiltered form. Emily observed this transformation with cautious optimism. She had long believed that people could change, but seeing Aaron integrate himself into their lives with genuine effort, humility, and consistency reinforced her hope. She recognized that true transformation required not just acknowledgement of past mistakes, but sustained action, a willingness to confront discomfort, and the courage to prioritize love and responsibility above all else. Aaron had embraced all of it, not because he was compelled to, but because he had discovered a new measure of purpose that could not be ignored. One weekend, they decided to take a trip to the countryside, a place far removed from the glittering lights and structured schedules of the city. The air was fresher, the sky wider, and the landscape vast, a perfect backdrop for reflection, connection, and growth. Lily ran ahead, laughing freely, her tiny feet stirring leaves along the path, while Emily walked beside Aaron, her hand brushing against his in a silent acknowledgement of the journey they had shared and the challenges they had overcome. Aaron found himself marveling at the simplicity of the moment. The city, with its towering skyscrapers and constant demands, had once defined him. Now, standing in the open expanse of nature, surrounded by the family he had fought to embrace, he understood the profound truth that life's greatest wealth was not measured in numbers or accolades, but in presence, love, and meaningful connection. Every smile from Lily, every glance from Emily, was a reminder that redemption is not about erasing the past. It is about building a future with integrity, care, and courage. During their stay, Aaron took the opportunity to share stories of his own childhood, moments of vulnerability he had rarely admitted to anyone. Emily listened, her expression a mixture of curiosity and quiet empathy. She recognized that this was another layer of trust being built, another step in understanding the man Aaron had been, the man he had become, and the man he now chose to be. Lily listened wide-eyed, absorbing the stories not only for entertainment, but for the subtle lessons woven within them, lessons about resilience, humility, and the importance of facing challenges with courage. In the evenings, they would sit by a small fire, the flames dancing and casting soft shadows across their faces. Aaron began to express gratitude openly, acknowledging not only the opportunity to be part of Lily's life, but also the strength and grace Emily had shown over the years. It was a dialogue of honesty, not performance, and Emily responded in kind, sharing moments of struggle and triumph that had defined her journey. The atmosphere was charged with a quiet reverence, a recognition that healing and connection are cultivated through authenticity, effort, and shared vulnerability. One particular afternoon, as they explored a winding trail overlooking a serene lake, Lily suddenly stopped and turned to Aaron. "Daddy," she said softly, "I like it when we're all together. It feels like home." Her words, simple yet profound, struck Aaron deeply. For years, he had sought validation through wealth, influence, and recognition. But never had he realized that true fulfillment is found in shared love, trust, and the quiet assurance that one's presence matters. In that instant, he understood that the path forward was not about proving himself, it was about being fully present. Consistently and with intention, Emily watched the interaction with a quiet smile, recognizing the subtle shifts that had taken place. The man who had once walked away in fear, pride, and misguided self-protection was now standing firmly in the present, embracing responsibility and offering love without reservation. It was a testament to the enduring human capacity for change, a living example that even those who have faltered can rise, learn, and create a future defined by courage, care, and integrity. As days turned into weeks and weeks into months, the family's bond grew stronger. Erin became an active participant in Lily's growth, attending school events, encouraging her passions, and creating moments of joy that were simple yet profound. Emily found herself able to trust him fully, not blindly, but with a confidence earned through consistent action, empathy, and genuine care. Their lives, once fractured by absence, betrayal, and pain, began to resemble the family she had always hoped to create, a family built on resilience, forgiveness, and unwavering love. One evening, as they returned from a quiet walk under a sky painted with the colors of sunset, Erin paused and looked at Emily and Lily. His eyes reflected a depth of emotion he had long concealed: gratitude, love, and the weight of realization. "Thank you," he said softly, "for allowing me to be part of this life, for showing me what truly matters, and for giving me the chance to do right." Emily reached for his hand, her grip firm and steady, a silent acknowledgement that their journey was ongoing but grounded in shared commitment. Lily leaned against him, her small presence a tangible reminder that love, connection, and trust are cultivated through presence, care, and consistency. In that moment, Erin understood the profound truth of life's most meaningful lessons, that power without empathy is hollow, that success without love is incomplete, and that redemption is not a moment, but a continuous, intentional practice. He had been given a second chance, and he chose to embrace it fully, not to rewrite the past, but to shape a future defined by courage, love, and unwavering dedication to those who mattered most. The city outside continued its ceaseless rhythm, but within the walls of their home, time moved differently. It moved with laughter, conversation, quiet understanding, and shared purpose. Erin, Emily, and Lily had created something enduring, a family forged not by perfection, but by resilience, honesty, and the courage to embrace life's challenges together. And as they stood united, looking toward the future, each of them carried the knowledge that love, commitment, and presence are the true measures of a life well lived, lessons that would guide them for years to come, shaping not only their own paths, but the legacy of courage, hope, and inspiration they would leave behind.